Hello everyone, Saturday with Kendra. I have my lemon butter water here. I am super missing coffee and my heavy cream. It's just not the same. But we'll talk about that at another time. Today we're going to continue on with the Purgatory series. Last time we talked about the state after death of suffering and forgiveness and all of the Bible verses that wrap up in that proof of purgatory. The video's up here somewhere, so take a look at that if you want to learn more about that state. Today we are going to talk about purification by fire and all of the Bible verses that pretty much support this purification that is necessary in order to get to heaven. So the first one is Hebrews 12:29. God is a consuming fire of love in heaven, of purgation in purgatory, or of suffering and damnation in hell. 1 Corinthians 3:10 through 15. This is where Paul says we are being judged by our works after death and tested by fire. Some works are lost, but the person is still saved. So the venial sins, the bad works that were committed, are burned up after death, but the person is still brought to salvation. This state is not in heaven because there are no souls with venial sins in heaven. And this state is not hell because there is no forgiveness or salvation. Where is this? Paul's referring to purgatory. So let's dive into this a little bit more. I have to read because this is kind of in depth. So let's take 1 Corinthians 3:15. If any man's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. The phrase suffer loss in the Greek is zemio, is this word down here because I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. The root word is zemiu, which also refers to punishment. This is also used in Exodus 21:22 and Proverbs 19:19, which refers to punishment from the Hebrew anash, meaning punish or penalty. Hence, this verse proves that there is an expiation of temporal punishment after our death, but the person is still saved. So this cannot mean that they're in heaven because there is no punishment in heaven. And it can't mean that they're in hell because the possibility of expiation no longer exists, and the person is not saved. Continuing on with 1 Corinthians 3:15, Paul writes, he himself will be saved, but only, or yet so, as through fire. He will be saved in Greek is this word, which means eternal salvation. The phrase but only, or yet so, in the Greek is hutus, which means in the same manner. This means that man is eternally rewarded and eternally saved in the same manner, purification by fire. All right, now let's look at 1 Corinthians 13 a little bit more, not just 15. We'll go back a little bit here. When Paul writes about God revealing the quality of each man's work by fire and purifying him, this purification relates to his sins, not just his good works. Protestants, in attempting to disprove the reality of purgatory, argue that Paul was only writing about rewarding good works and not punishing sins, because punishing and purifying a man from sins would be admitting that there's a purgatory. Amazing how we play these games, right? 1 Corinthians 3:17. We haven't looked at this one yet, but this verse proves that purgation after death deals with punishing sin. That is, destroying God's temple is a bad work, which is a mortal sin, which leads to death. 1 Corinthians 3:14, 15, and 17, purgatory thus reveals the state of righteousness, state of venial sin, and the state of mortal sin, all of which are judged after death. So the state of righteousness is in verse 14, state of venial sin is in verse 15, and the state of mortal sin is in verse 17, and all of those are judged after death. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 6 and 7, Peter refers to this purgatorial fire to test the fruits of our faith. Jude 1:23, people are being snatched out of the fire to be saved. People are already saved when they're in heaven, and there is no possibility of being saved once they're in hell. These people are being led to heaven from purgatory. Revelation 3:18 and 19. Jesus refers to this fire as what refines into gold those he loves if they repent of their sins. In this context of after death, because Jesus, speaking from heaven, awards the white garment of salvation after the purgation of fire, both after death. Daniel 12:10. Daniel refers to this refining by saying, "Many shall purify themselves, make themselves white and refined." The Book of Wisdom, chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. The dead are disciplined and tested by fire to receive their heavenly reward. This is the fire of purgatory. Sirach 2:5. Some of you who are not Catholic are wondering what in the world book that is. Well, it's not in non-Catholic books. The Book of Sirach is beautiful. What does it say about purgatory? For gold is tested in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of humiliation. Zechariah 13:8 through 9. God says 2/3 will perish, and 1/3 shall be left alive, put in the fire and tested like silver and gold. The ones who perish go to hell, and there is no need for refinement in heaven, so these people are in purgatory. So there you go. Those are the Bible verses that have to do with purification of fire that all of us need to consider and take to heart. Another thing that you can do for those souls that have gone before you, keep praying, keep offering up sacrifices, but also offer up a mass. I recall reading some of the saints that one holy man was in purgatory, and one of the saints, I can't remember which one, I'll figure it out, I'll let you know. He was talking to him, and the guy was saying, look, I need one more mass said for me. So keep having the masses said for your loved ones. I think it's $10, at least in America, that's about what it is. And you can have as many masses as you would like said for as many people that you love. There's no limits. Just go to your nearest parish and say that you would like to have a mass said for the repose of someone's soul. And then give them your name, your $10, and if you can, go to that mass. Okay, that's about it for this section of purgatory. Next time, we're going to talk about the early church fathers. If you're out there a non-Catholic, by all means, we have to look at the early church fathers. It seems like all of a sudden they don't exist. 1,500 years after Jesus came, all of a sudden Luther came up with his own stuff. There were all of these early church fathers who wrote many books, and a lot of them corroborate purgatory. Alrighty, I'm going to go head over to the Soul, Mind, and Body group. I've got a lot to share. Relationships, by the way, speaking of which, relationships. Join me live tomorrow at noon Central in Chicago time. We're going to talk about relationships. Bring any issue that you have to my attention and let's talk about it. We're going to talk about what do you do with people who don't have the same faith or don't believe what you believe. We're going to talk about how do you get through things with people in your family, the ones that are closest to you, maybe a spouse or another family member. Maybe you got issues at work with coworkers or maybe even your boss. And then you can bring things to me and we'll talk about how to love thy neighbor. Alrighty, I'm going to go over to the Soul, Mind, and Body group. We're going to talk a little bit about my what I'm doing here, testing these foot pads. I'm also going to talk a little bit about my relationship with my husband because we had a little discussion. Most of those people know. And a few other things about what I'm struggling with and what I'm suffering with right now, which is like, too much information for you all. But if you want to join, click the join button below. $4.99 a month. All you get is too much information over there. But it's all straight talk. So feel free to join. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Find something more with God, soul, mind, and body, and have a blessed and inspired day.
I finally found something